Welkom bij het 8 uur journaal. Vandaag een update uit Israël. Vandaar dat we het weer in het Engels doen. Hi Sorin.
Hi, Willem. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I guess we are the same. We are almost in the same situation. Coercion, limitation, compilation, you name it. And
Are you still working as a physician?
lucky for me, I'm still working. Yes, I'm still
Good,
working,
because
but you never know what's going to happen because the pressure is building up from the authorities. And what really I hope so that will somehow be balanced is the counter pressure building up from the population. And this is an interesting thing we might even discuss later on.
Yes, I hope so. Because what is the situation now in Israel? Are there restrictions? Do people need to wear face masks? Are there shops closed? Is there a curfew, etc.?
Current situation in Israel is as follows, and the last few days in the last week were completely hectic and full of uncertainty, because it was supposed to be applied what's called the Green Pass or the Green Certificate policy, banning unvaccinated individuals from accessing malls and the malls inside. Moreover, the order, because it's not really a law, it's just something because of the situation, emergency laws, stipulated that once an individual has this green pass, green certificate, upon entering a shopping mall, he should be given a bracelet with a given color. And this color should be changed daily by the mall administration in order not to mislead the people. So in case somebody was trying to trick the security, and today they get a green bracelet, and to use it tomorrow, no, tomorrow is going to be a different color. So they thought even this way, and this is so segregating, because, and it's also insulting, because already there are individuals that were being coerced to have this injection. I cannot call it vaccine. But see, you also give them external markings.
Well, and we know what happened with external markings, of course. So that is amazing that still people go with it. While in Israel, most of the people are Jewish and have a very vivid memory and history with the concentration camps and the marking with the markings on the arms or the yellow stars. It's to me, it's baffling.
I'll tell you something more than that. To see where it goes. Until now, the Green Pass would consist of being either so-called vaccinated, recovered, or you have a negative PCR test. The last one was stricken from the order. So you have basically only two possibilities: either recovering or vaccinating. All this recovering will shortly become so-called unvaccinated unless given a dose or something. So you see that they are pushing and pushing and pushing towards an endpoint, which is distributing a compound, a medical compound, a medical procedure, just to let you participate in the daily life. And yes, of course, it reminds me, because I have also in the family, I have family that are Holocaust survivors. I have. I think we've been talking about this in previous meetings. My father-in-law, he has gone through almost all the hell of the Second World War, starting from the ghettos in Czechoslovakia. Then he went to Auschwitz, and then he went to Birkenau, and then he was in the death march until he was liberated somewhere in North Dominic. And he was wearing this David Star, yellow David Star. And not only this, he was also given a number on his hand. So this is something, I'm talking about this and I feel chills. But this reminds me of, actually what happens today reminds me of this. Because the David Star on the cloth, it's like it's like the Green Pass on the phone with a QR code or whatever. But having the injection administered, it's like putting your number on the hand. And for what I'm concerned, this is the mark of the beast. This is the mark of the beast, no less than that.
Yeah, well, we had a court case in Holland against somebody that is not Jewish. I think he's married to a Jewish woman, but he made that comparison as well. Actually, not with the Holocaust itself, but with the years and the situation that led up to the persecution and extermination of the Jewish people among other populations, because also the handicapped, the gypsies and gay were also exterminated, of course. It is a horrible period. We should not forget, and I think everybody agrees with that. But he was actually sentenced and found guilty for comparing it, and I think that is a very slippery slope. How do you feel, and how do you see that?
I would try not to be the judge, because I'm not completely familiar with all the facts. But I would like to point out some things. And for the sake of the conversation, we all know the history, how it started. It started with the racial criteria, with the typical Jewish look, with the nose, with the diameters and all this, which had absolutely nothing to do with being an intact human being. Okay, so you could be very well healthy individual, but you would be classified as a sick individual, and the disease would be being Jewish. Well, there are some individuals of Jewish origin that they don't really have the typical, and they resemble more the Aryan, yet they were considered to be Jews. There are some Aryan with a Jewish look, so-called Jewish look. So he was considered what? Jewish? No, he was considered an Aryan. And it started with certain limitation, and then it was added on top of them another one and another one and another one, until we got to the point we already know, in which Jews were either deported from their houses to extermination camps, or went into hide in different places. And we all know where the places are. Could be underground, could be all kind of attics, and let's see, they were basically healthy individuals being sequestrated from participation to the daily life for what's so-called being sick with the Jewish disease. And I'm pointing out this because I would like to do a recapitulation of the last 2 years when it all started in somewhere November, December 2019 with this ship in Japan, the cruise ship. And that what actually started the whole hysteria and the scaremongering that was fed by the media like no other disease before. And to tell you the truth, I took it for granted. I really believed them. But it took me only two months until I understood there's something is wrong here with the numbers. But this is not the point. The point is that it all started with the so-called PCR test, which all know, we all know what is the value of this test, which is not a test at all. And basically based on this idiotic tool,
yep.
People were sent to quarantine for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks. They were completely healthy. What was their disease? Positive so-called test. Did they display any clinical finding? No. Were they able to transmit? Not really, because research and studies, later studies proved that asymptomatic individuals are hardly contagious. So you see, it's like the Jewish disease, it is the PCR disease. You are asymptomatic, but you have a positive PCR. Well, I'm telling you, these people are positive at all time. The PCR is the negative thing in their life. So here
but now
is
we go even a step further, because if people refuse to do a test, then they are presumed guilty. They are expected or seen as spreaders of the disease. And this is exactly the words that were used by the Nazis for the Jews, as spreaders of the disease, as the disease in society, as a vermin that had to be exterminated.
Yes. I remember before I came to Israel, I lived in Romania, and there were individuals that still in the 70s and later, they still consider Jews as something one should be aware of. And it's the same today. You still go, and they don't know. You are in the street, okay? You are in a supermarket. And if you don't wear the mask, or even if the mask is under the nose is outside, you would see people running from you as if you have a rabies or something else. It's crazy. They don't know if you are healthy. You are in the street. You are well. You don't look sick. You are doing shopping. You look with a nice color. Okay, so if you have to stand a Mengele test in the concentration camp, one would easily pass. And he's active. He's talking on the phone with his wife about the grocery he should bring. Extremely active. Why to presume he is sick and try to keep distance from him? You see, this is all something they have installed, because I cannot find any other word. They have installed during the months, during the last year, creating this massive, heavy propaganda of fake disease. Because a healthy person is not a sick person.
So he cannot be contagious. This is actually almost
in
impossible.
most cases. In most cases, they're not. There was a study of, I think it was millions in China.
Yes.
And also there was a study in Scotland on I think it was 300,000 people, I think, with the children on the different ages. None of them were contagious. Asymptomatic is healthy. We have to make a clear differentiation. Unlike chronic disease, like for, let's say, hypertension, diabetes, coronary disease, which you may suffer of them, but at a given moment you are asymptomatic. It's not like the same with infectious disease. Infectious disease will display. It is true there is some kind of incubation period, but even in the incubation period, you're not really. It's only towards the end when you become sick. But this is crazy. And let's look back. So many years, people got flu, and there were some years with terrible flu impacts. Anyone kept social distancing? Anyone used a mask? Anyone shut down institutions or working places? Anyone sent people into quarantine? None of this happened. None of this happened. This is completely aberrant.
So, as with, and that's another parallel, as with the Jews in the 30s and 40s, it served a political purpose. And what we're seeing now is the same mechanism. We're not talking about the extermination. We're not talking about the severity, but there's a mechanism that is very similar. And there's something else that is very similar. It is technology driven, as was the extermination or the prosecution of the Jews. That was the thing that stood out from between the Nazis and other horrific events in history. IBM made the coding cards. Everybody got a number on their arm. It was very industrial, like it is now. And I think if we cannot point out these similarities, and of course, it's also good to point out the differences, but then what is the point of remembering that such a horrific event took place if we cannot make the comparison?
I think this is a rhetorical question, right? Well, it is the same. It is the same. There are so many companies creating this PCR, so-called PCR test. It's not a test. And so many pharma companies are creating a compound that it is used to be called vaccine, but in de facto, it doesn't vaccinate, as we see, because I said it before, and I will say it every other time. If a compound doesn't prevent you from getting a disease, doesn't prevent it from having the disease, and doesn't prevent it from transmitting the disease, this is not a vaccine. If it only alleviates the symptoms, well, my friend, take an Acamol, take an aspirin, it will alleviate the same way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even if you don't look at it from a chemical point of view, which is gene therapy in that sense, even if you only look from it from a medical perspective, you cannot call it a vaccine because it doesn't elicit any real immunity. Now, I want to go
it elicits plenty of side effects. Some of them we are unable even to evaluate because they are so-called long-term side effects. And to tell you the truth, what's called the virus system, which we are supposed to have in Israel, which is not working also. That it's crazy. Private, on individual basis, they came with databases, and it is scary. What started with several cases of myocarditis, now you have a prevalence of, I think it was instead of 4 to 100,000, it's something like 100 and something. It's many times more than it used to be in previous years. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And this is the only one. Who heard of stroke of 17 years girl? Who heard of acute coronary syndrome in a perfectly healthy child? This is crazy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this story is going to blow up. If we look in Holland, then we see that there are enormous rises among all ages in excess mortality. And of course, the weakest age, the 70 plus, and the people with underlying health conditions or comorbidities, they are struck hardest. But then you hear it is climate change, it is the cold weather, it is the previous infections, it's long COVID. But you're never allowed to call out the most obvious reason for this excess mortality. And that is, of course, the injection, because that is the thing that is very different from last year, for instance.
Well, in Israel, we have a new diagnosis. It's not related. Okay, you can have a cardiac arrest of a perfectly healthy young individual, but it's not. He was just injected few days ago, but it's not related. You probably are aware of many athletes that have been collapsing in the last period after being injected, but it's not related. We witness difficulties of airline companies manning the pilot positions in planes in order to try to maintain some routine of flights, but it's not related. So this is a new diagnosis. It's like a new disease. It's like the PCR. The PCR was called confirmed. If you're a PCR confirmed, this is a disease. Well, I tell you, William, you are confirmed as a nice guy. Does it make you sick? I don't think so. So we have all kind of weird things. And what's aggravating me is the cooperation of so many medical professionals. It's like they have forgotten the profession, the medicine. It's like they have forgotten the Hippocratic vow. I don't know what's happening. Everything is upside down. So I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, for me, it's either one of two. It's either they have have economical interest in this, which makes them accomplices to a crime against humanity, or they are really convinced and they are so stupid that I would call them useful idiots of politicians. And for this also, they should be banned from practicing. Instead, what happens? People criticizing after being taught to read articles. And I was in the course of what's called a critical reading of articles to see if it is really performed, not really, it was performed properly. So just for being critical, you might be banned from working. This is abnormal. This is abnormal. And you know what? This is another point resembling this past dark period.
Yes, because Jews were excluded from a lot of professions. This happened through the ages, but specifically the Nuremberg laws, of course, prohibited them from engaging with non-Jews, having marriages with non-Jews, having jobs that had contact with non-Jews, and it's very similar, I would say. This exclusion of a group for so-called medical reasons, that is the same.
I concur. And from what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is the president of the European Council, Ursula von der Leyen.
Yep.
Somebody here said or showed that she claimed that Nuremberg should be canceled or thrown away, if
correct,
to use her words. I don't know if she said that.
Yes, she said that.
She said, "Is it documented?"
It is documented. Yes.
I hope no. I really have to make sure everything I say, because they may sue me for slander. Or
no. But this I had a member of the European Parliament, a Romanian member, Cristian Teres, in the show, and he confirmed this, and he had a speech about this as well. It is very worrying on one side.
He was calling her Ursula von der Leyen.
Yes, and I think that's a nice way of putting it, because she is a liar, factually. She lied about the contact she had with the pharmaceutical industry, with Bourla, and she also destroyed the evidence. Her messages and her emails are not traceable, so we cannot check what they conjured up. But she said she wants to get rid of it. There's a few sides to that. Of course, the code is more ceremonial or symbolic, because it has been codified in law by the Helsinki Treaty, by the Geneva Convention, and by the Oviedo Convention. So those are the things that bind countries, but also physicians, to this code. So getting rid of the code wouldn't legally do anything, but what it shows to me is that this is an implicit admittance to guilt. If you say that you have to get rid of it, why do you have to get rid of it? Because it is an experiment.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And this is actually what you're saying is qualifying her for the first category I mentioned before. Well, she's not a medical professional. I think she was a security or defense minister in the German government.
Correct. Yes.
So she has nothing to do with the medicine, yet she plays like another asshole.
Well, not entirely. Her husband, Heiko van der Linden, he is the CEO of a gene tech company. So let's keep it in the family.
Okay. So still she displays, she uses, I think she misuses her position to promote personal interests. And this is exactly what I was mentioning before, that people are qualifying to those professionals with personal interests. And they are accomplices. They're definitely accomplices.
Well, in her case, I would say she is suspect to being a perpetrator, not only an accomplice, I would say. I want to touch one other medical subject, as you are a doctor. Do you see the Omicron variant rising in percentages in Israel? And are you worried about it, or do you think it's good news?
Well, this one is tricky because for the last year, and I'm not talking about 2020, I'm talking about 2021, which we are about to end in a few days. I don't trust anything the medical establishment declares. I don't know what this Omicron variant is. I've been reading that it is such a mutation that it is unlikely, statistically unlikely to occur, and hence implying that it might be engineered. But regarding the origin of this and if it really exists, we do, I mean, from what we see in the media here, but it's hard to believe the media. There are some cases, okay? But it is not secret that, again, it's the same scaremongering. Everybody says that it might be more contagious. I don't know. Whatever I say, I just repeat, but I would encourage everybody to check everything. So it might be contagious, but at the same time, it is less severe clinically. So as I said before, if it is less severe, why the hell people should go again into lockdowns? Why again you should seclude people into quarantines? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And I will say it again, doesn't make any sense. Listen, it somehow in medicine, you see, let's relate it to one of the worst disease we have, okay? Cancer. Cancer has mortality rate, which is dependent to the type of the cancer. But you see, the worst the prognosis is, the lower the prevalence in population is. And the easier cases, they are more frequent. And it's the same here. So it's more contagious, but it probably came on the pathogenesis account. So it was like a trade-off between contagiosity and pathogenesis. I don't know if it is like this, but today science has nothing to do with the measures taken. So basically, I urge everybody to question everything, including social media, because I've encountered, and I'm sure you encountered this too, so many false informations that it is really have to.
Yes, and I would say on both sides of the spectrum. There's a lot of people that claim that he and she died from a shot and it is not related, and that is not helpful. That is also fear mongering, and I think we have to be very precise to what led to what and see things in perspective. I don't believe COVID is a killer of millions of people, and I also don't believe that millions of people already died of the shot. Do I think people can die from COVID or from the injections? Yes, unfortunately, yes. And I scale them in the same category. The only problem there is that COVID is very selective for people who have comorbidities, who are old, who have autoimmune diseases. And what we see with the injections, it can happen to anybody. And that's why I personally am in favor of natural infection and natural immunity than with these injections, because I don't believe they work and they pose a greater threat to most of the population than the disease itself.
Well, you don't have to believe they are not working. This is pure fact. And I would challenge any fact checker to correct me. It is widely admitted that these so-called vaccines are not really protecting. So basically, you've been given a shot, which doesn't protect you. Okay, so let's start with this. Let me tell you another thing. What you describe about the COVID and morbidity and mortality, and with increased incidence in the higher age tier, it also happened before with the flu. With the flu, it happened before. I can tell you, I still remember, and there is an article in January 2020 when one of the senior, it was Professor Sadetsky, she said, and it is an article, I think it was the second or the third week of January, and she said that the occupancy in the hospital is very high because of the flu and the morbidity and also mortality. And it happened only a month before the corona. And she said it about the flu. And it happens all the way. I would tell you something else. Increased mortality that we may witness is because of inadequate and irrelevant treatment. And this remdesivir treatment, which is on the use, I think it for at least a decade or more. It was tried on Ebola, on hepatitis B, on dengue fever, if I'm not mistaken.
And you know which one they actually made it for as a start? MERS. They made it for MERS.
Yeah. Yes, but MERS had, I think it was 30% mortality.
That's what they say, but at this time, I question everything.
Yes. Nice that you took my advice. So you see, during the decade, it was proven a bad treatment. Why to continue and try to promote it in other instances? And guess what? Go to the Wikipedia and download it fast before it is getting changed. What is the most frequent complication of this drug?
I think it's kidney failure.
Somewhere the most is respiratory failure.
Respiratory failure, okay.
Yes. So this is the most. So I'm trying to be very, very careful, but I'm not sure if a patient died from the COVID or as a complication from this experimental drug, because it's still experimental. So I leave you with this thought.
Well, then I want to go to one more picture, and please translate this picture here for me.
Well, what it says in the upper part, we see Prime Minister Bennett, and the subtitles say, "We are taking you the freedom for your safety." And the lower part, we see Adolf H. pointing out and says, with the subtitle said, "This is exactly what I said."
Do you feel offended?
No. Because Prime Minister Bennett, only a few weeks ago, he said, and it was published and it was publicly condemned, that I want parents to fight with each other. So instead of a leader to lead and to unite, what is he seeking? He's seeking division. He's seeking contradiction. He is making quarrel between in population. This is not leadership. This is not genuine leadership. This is being, I don't know what. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you have a Christmas wish for the people in the Netherlands?
It's hard for me to wish something to the Netherlands that I will not wish it for the people here or the worldwide.
Do it for the world.
And you know what? I'll go back to something that especially the Dutch people should contemplate on. I remember from history books when it said there were some nations in Europe that were sheltering and protecting the Jewish population. One of them was the Danish people. They were genuinely what's called Chassid Umot Olam. They were righteous of the world. It was implied on the Dutch people also, but it actually happened only to the royal family. They were really in favor, and they were trying to protect. What happened de facto is that Dutch population, some of the Dutch, were sheltering the fleeing Jews, while they were extraditing them to the Germans, either from their own houses or from the hiding places. And this is no less than hypocrisy. So if there is something I really wish for the whole world, and especially the Dutch and even the Israeli people, look in the mirror of truth. Don't be a bigot. Don't be a hypocrite. Show compassion. Show love. Show faith in the human race, not hate. This is my message.
Thank you very much, Soren.
Thank you, William, for having me.